Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in. Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. If you thought that my interview with my client, Allie, a few weeks ago was unique, today is going to be doubly unique for you because instead of me just talking all by myself, I am doing another interview. And this time, my interview is not just with just some rando client or parent or off the street. It is with the biggest, most important parent in my life, which is my husband, Mike. Mike, hi. Introduce yourself to our audience here.
Hi, Ann. Thanks for having me on your podcast. This is Michael Kaplan.
Oh my gosh, you guys, if you're watching the video replay, you can see that Mike is actually blushing right now.
That's right.
Anywho, because we're talking about dads this month, and I've been kind of bouncing the idea around in my head about talking to Mike on the podcast anyway, I thought, you know what? This is the greatest time to do so. We are going to talk about not necessarily the nitty gritty of marriage. Maybe we'll do a future podcast episode on that if that's the topic. What we're going to talk about today is just fatherhood and just one person's unique experience of fatherhood. And I think Mike, not just because he's my partner and my, co-parent, but also because Mike and I, one of the few things actually that we have in common, I would say, is that both of us are totally obsessed with self-growth and self-improvement. And so I think Mike is also a really great example of the kind of parenting that is possible when you do your homework, when you do your work and you really hold yourself to a high standard in terms of how you show up in relationships and things like that, which is really kind of just a special little glimpse that we can all get into, how that parenting can look. And also, like I said, we're talking about dads this month. And why are we talking about dads? I need to give my beta group of my dad's group a plug. The beta version of the dad's group is open for enrollment just for this month. If you enroll, you get founders pricing and founders benefits. And it is a phenomenal group of dads. So if you're out there thinking about joining and working with me, this is a extremely affordable, B, extremely powerful, and C, extremely fun way to get this work done. So that's why we're talking about dads. Mike, I would love to just give you the floor a little bit and have you just talk about yourself as a dad. What is your experience of fatherhood? Let us have a little glimpse into the mind of a father icon.
Oh my, give me way too much credit, Ann. Big question. With a fairly large answer. With having four kids, and I think whenever I hear you talk about parenting, it's always I'm always learning, and so it's always great to have a parent coach, quite frankly, in your house because let's face it, everybody, there's no manual to this shit, and you worry about messing it up because you don't want to have your kids, you don't want you want your kids as less scathed going through life as possible, especially at your hands, and so fatherhood for me has been a learning experience about myself, but also I've developed, the things I want that I hold most dear about parenting, which is having a really good relationship with my children. Something that's healthy, obviously, something that I can look back and be proud of. And how that is defined is kind of like what my mom used to tell me. Her job was to make me a contributing adult and so to society. And so I keep that in mind where I'm trying to impress upon our kids, these life lessons, these qualities, these characteristics that will help serve them in, going into their life and becoming adults and being successful in whatever they want to do and being, quite frankly, happy. And so fatherhood to me boils down to the relationships I've developed with all our children, as you can attest to, and we have different relationships with each of our children. And they're very unique and they're extremely special. and they aren't perfect by any means, but they certainly are. I feel we're on our way to helping them um, achieve what they want in their life. And so, as a father, being a leader, being a teacher, being a role model, um, and yeah, and just being a good model for them is very, very important to me.
It's interesting as you were talking, something that popped in my head. I've been kind of searching for in preparing for today's podcast, like this idea of like, what's our key? Like, what's the key, or like, what's our secret and how we've parented? And I think you actually hit on it, maybe even in a roundabout way, but I think it's something that actually would be super beneficial for the listeners to hear. And it's something that I teach all the time. In module one of my curriculum, we talk about this because it's so universal. It's so challenging for practically every co-parenting dyad. When you said we each have our unique relationships with our kids, you know, that could be interpreted in two ways. One is, well, obviously each of our children are unique, so that we obviously, of course, have unique relationships with each of them. They're four different people, right? But the other thing that I think is important for listeners to understand, and I'd love to hear your experience of this in our relationship, is that each of us, me and Mike, have our own private, sacred, individual relationships with each of our four children. And that is a huge game changer for almost all of my clients who are either co parenting, maybe they're married, maybe they're separated, whatever, to really give themselves permission. Like, I actually don't have to be on the same page as my partner. My partner and I aren't always going to be a united front. My co-parent and I aren't always going to see all these situations with our kids the same. We each get to have our own relationship that's, between me and Elijah, between me and Gigi, between me and River, right? Like, and then Mike doesn't have any business there. And likewise, Mike has each of those relationships with his children that I have no business in. And I actually think that that might be one of the major game changers for me personally, when I kind of gave myself permission or landed upon this way of looking at parenting, that led to a lot of other sort of ripple effects in our parenting. So I just love to hear what you think about that. And um, I have some other thoughts, but I kind of want to just hear what your take on everything I'm saying so far.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And the first thing that comes to mind is, hey, we didn't just snap our fingers or wave a magic wand to get to what Ann just described. Like there were some trials and error in defining those personal dynamics with our kids and the dynamics between you and me, right? And I, interfering with one another's unique and private relationships with our kids is something that I feel as though we needed to kind of, work out with each other. And what I'm alluding to is like, I know, or I go out of my way not to quote unquote interfere with your relationship, your unique relationship with our kids, and vice versa. And so what does that mean? I'll give you an example. Like I may disagree with something you said or something you did or whatever, but I don't undermine while I'm interacting or relating to our kids. I don't undermine you. And I don't believe you undermine me either. Um, and so that's the first thing I've kind of thought about is like as I'm having my unique relationship with our children, there in that within that relationship as it relates to you, I am not undermining um I'm not undermining your teachings or your position or anything like that. And I think that that's important because when we're talking about being a united front ultimately with parenting, you don't want it to do anything that could um, harm that. Now, that being said, you know, I don't think that my relationships with the kids detract from your relationships with them. And I think sometimes people get caught up in that, oh, you know, I saw, and it was either another podcast or one of your great posts about like dads are the fun, dads play the role of the fun, the fun person or whatever. And Sometimes that's the case, but that doesn't mean anything about you and or other moms out there. It just means like, hey, I have a camaraderie with the kids that is different from yours, and God knows you have a great camaraderie with the kids as well, but it's different. And
Yeah, I think that is you're hitting on another thing, which is kind of like feeling secure in yourself and your relationship with your kids, that you don't feel threatened by the closeness or specialness that they have that's different from you, or where maybe your co-parent is strong and you might be weak, or whatever like that. I think that's a piece of the work, and that's your kind of our own personal work. Like if I'm feeling insecure about myself, that's my work to become confident and secure in my relationship with my kids so that I don't go off, reactive when, whatever, dad gets to be the fun dad, or dad doesn't agree with me on this stuff. But I want to point out to everybody, because you actually put this in my head, Mike, before we even started talking or recording for today, when you were listening to the last week's episode, the whole dumping on dads episode, you had said that you had felt like, actually, since I became a parent coach, you have actually felt more empowered to like step into your role and step into that place of having that like unique relationship and showing up really autonomous, independent, taking initiative, like all of these things that we want for all parents, moms, dads, doesn't matter who, to be able to really say, like, I am a skilled and confident and capable parent. I will handle this situation according to my values and how I want to show up here. And I don't need permission. I don't need buy off. I don't need approval from anybody else. I know how to handle this because I'm the parent here. I thought it was really interesting to hear you say that you have felt more that way over time since I became a parent coach. And so, what I really want the listeners to take away from this is like the dynamic that we have right now in parenting. It wasn't always like this. When we first had kids, well, first of all, I wasn't a parent coach. I didn't know my ass from my elbow as a parent at all. And I think you and I fell into all the same traps that most co parents do, of like, just stepping all over each other and interfering and Monday morning quarterbacking and all of that stuff that winds up just totally weakening both of you as parents. And it really was, I think, because of my own personal growth that then led me to become this parent coach and everything, that I've have to practice what I preach, right? And so if I'm going to teach all of my clients, hey, you know what, stop this hopeless pursuit of a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow of, this says it, everybody says it this exact same way every single time they talk to me. I need to be on the same page. We need to be on the same page. We need to be a united front. Fucking stop chasing that stupid unicorn, because it don't exist. And if you give yourself permission to agree to disagree with your partner and let them handle situations and say, you know what, that's not how I would have handled it. And also, and maybe I even can say, that's a mistake. You're handling this poorly, to myself. But it's never useful to get in there and try to sort of taint the the other parent child relationship. And I just really want everyone out there to know, like, it wasn't always, rainbows and unicorns here in the parenting department for me and Mike.
it still
It's
isn't.
something you grow, of course. Yeah, we still have
Right.
challenges now for sure. Be something you grow into. But I would say that just even opening your mind up to the fact that it's okay if you're not on the same page sometimes as a parent, just allowing that possibility to exist and not be a problem, to me feels like that the beginning of this sort of growth trajectory where you truly are not just in name co-parents, but you truly are co-parenting, not dominating one dominating the other, not parallel parenting, all of that other good stuff. It is truly um a collaboration, because we're allowed to be different and follow our own path and get there at our own time and all of that stuff.
I mean, I agree generally. Well, I agree with most of what you just said, which I know you love it when I agree with you. But there's a couple of things I want to push back just a little bit in regard to this unicorn of being on the same page. Like, I do think it's important that there's some fundamental basic things that you and I are very much on the same page about in regard to our parenting style. And that's really important to it's important to me, and without speaking for you, but with speaking for you, I think it's important for you. And so I could see that if fundamental things of parenting and modeling, um, parents aren't on the same page, I could see why that could be a problem. Um,
But I want to, so I'm going to push back against you. Look, everybody, you're seeing a very like in the moment example of us not agreeing or agreeing to disagree. I think that parenting style is very different than parenting
mm,
values. So I do think that it's very challenging. And I always tell this to my clients too. Like, I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass and say, like, your life wouldn't be infinitely easier if you and your partner were on the same page. Like, obviously, of course, when everybody agrees, everything's easier. That is great. What I'm trying to say is that it is possible for you to show up in your relationship with your child how you want to be and as a parent you want to be, regardless of what your partner is doing. And I do think that is very helpful when parents at least have the similar values, even when their styles are totally not similar. But also, like, there are many, many, many listeners out there right now who are either still in relationships or have left relationships but are co parenting who share neither values nor parenting style. And I don't think it's true or fair to say to those parents, like, well, you're fucked because you have to be on the same page or else you can't be a good parent. Like, that's just not true. And I think even just allowing it to be true that I can be the most kick ass parent on the planet, regardless of what my co parent is doing, regardless of what my partner is saying or doing. Nothing on this planet stops me from being the parent I want to be. That in and of itself is so liberating. It's so freeing to realize like I can just keep my eyes on my own homework here. Like I can maintain my own integrity in my relationship with my child. And that doesn't mean I might not cry myself to sleep at night wishing my partner saw it the way I do. That absolutely is allowed to happen. I
I,
don't know if I'm making myself more clear.
no, in fact, I'm glad you said that because the distinction between parenting style versus parenting value is a really, really good one. And as you were talking about, I'm like, yes, I think I articulated my point poorly, which is you and I definitely have different styles. Um, our values, though, are very, very similar. For example, like we have a very open household. There's no topic that's off limits. That's a value that we have. We want open communication with our children, and we want them to feel like we're very approachable to talk about anything. Now, how we go about talking to them is a style, right? And we may have different style in regard to how we talk to them, but quite frankly, I think you and I have very similar styles. So it might be a poor example, but you get the picture. Yeah, I mean, I think where I, as a dad, have kind of gotten into my head, is when I feel as though, my style, is being either criticized or I get defensive, um, at times, and it doesn't happen that often, but it does happen, and I think that's where we go a little bit awry sometimes. And but that's my like as you stated, that's my work to do. That's not your work to do. And quite frankly, and I'll admit it publicly on this in this forum, like, you know, that has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with me. Why am I taking it personally? There's something going on inside of my head that, that makes me take it personally, not because you said something to me, or whatnot. So, I know we're kind of going a little bit off track here, but as kind of coming full circle to the styles that we have, my style with our children, very different from yours. But again, it's with the ultimate goal of being close with them and modeling for them the best I can, knowing I'm going to screw up, you know, I'm going to screw up and it is what it is. Like I got to accept that for what it is.
What would you say, changing tax a little bit, but just kind of making things a little bit more tangible for listeners? I wonder, what would you say is kind of like one of the biggest things you've learned or grown around, like through doing this work?
What is the biggest thing I've learned or grown from? I think, lately there's been a theme of just holding space to allow someone to have their feelings and have their own experience, and one, not be take it personally, and two, you know, just be present with our kids. My disposition is to want to be a fixer or a helper, or, you know, I don't know, just try to contribute and make whatever painful thing is going on in our kid's life like less painful. And through, quite frankly, through, watching you and seeing how you react to those things with our children, I'm learning to hold space for them and trying not to quote unquote fix whatever they are going through, or because it comes off as denying their feelings, and which is the opposite. I want to validate their feelings even though I don't agree with them, or whatnot, or I wish I could wave a magic wand and get rid of them. So I think the thing I've learned most about myself as a father is being able to kind of sit back, let our kids make the mistakes that we know that they're going to make, and be okay with that, and be supportive of them. And as well as, I think it's real easy. I know we get into these roles, as a father, you have a quote unquote fatherly role. And that's true. I mean, it's very true. However, I think based on some of the self-help books that I've read, like the ego can really get you entrenched in that role per se. And there can be some negative aspects of that. So, I've learned kind of to take a step back and say, yes, this is quote unquote my role with my children, but to honor the relationship, in the sense of, just because they're my children or their kids and I'm the adult, that I don't step on them, so to speak. I know that I'm kind of talking
No, I
obtusely.
mean, I think that that is a game changer. Like this ability to let our kids struggle, to own the fact that we want to change things and fix things for them is actually our work, not the work of fixing it, the work of feeling that feeling and
Mhm.
dealing with it. I mean, that's a huge game changer. And I love that. And I love that. I mean, especially love that you came to that conclusion and you've been growing in that direction as a result of your own personal work, learning from the stuff that I teach, like all of this stuff. I think it's such a great example of how coaching works in general, like how when you work with a parent coach, when you're in my beta version of my dad's group, for example, as you're working on this stuff, you're getting that feedback, you're doing your own personal work, and you can start to see a loosening and a softening around this stuff. And to be honest, I see a huge parallel between what we were just talking about, this idea of like giving each other permission to just be on our own journey with our kids, not needing to micromanage or interfere with each other's path with our children. The more that we soften around that, the more actually well aligned we become as parents. Like we had so much more conflict in our marriage and in our parenting when we were trying to force each other to be on the same page back in the day. Now, where we've allowed for the possibility and the permission for us to be disparate and have discord, we are way more aligned in our parenting than ever before. And the same is true with this thing. Like, as you have allowed yourself to soften around this idea that we don't want our kids to suffer, and you've allowed yourself to kind of go deeper in your own personal work and take on these lessons that you've been exposed to, all of a sudden there's a softening around this idea that like our kids' lives have to be a certain way, or it's a dad's role to fix things or whatever. Our kids are doing phenomenal, and our kids have especially our older children, have demonstrated time and time again their ability to step into leadership in their own lives and help themselves when they're in pain and fix their own problems. And so to me, it's this idea of like softening around the thing that you're resisting gives you the thing you're trying to create. And I just love that. I think it's a like a major, if you had to just put one little concept to encapsulate every single topic that we talk about in coaching, in my coaching groups or whatever, it would be, something like this idea of like acceptance and surrender being the path towards the thing that you're so attached to. Releasing that attachment and allowing the thing you're afraid of to exist and all those things.
It definitely is a component of, I mean, you talk to every parent and it's hard. It is
Mm-hmm.
so hard to parent and parent well. Um, and one of the things that I think is so hard about it is it requires such a large investment in personal work, um, to develop yourself, develop your mindset. Um, again, be present, um, trying hard not to react when your kid's in your face telling you to go, F yourself. Or when your kid's like, I want to have sex in my bedroom. I mean, there's so many things that you can react to all day long, but to take a step back and respond instead of reacting, it takes so much work as a father, I'm assuming as a mother. And it's, I think, like you said, to put an emphasis on it, I think it really is the key, one of the keys to good parenting, or at least me parenting the best I can, is to respond versus react to what's going on in front of me and being present about it.
I just love that. And I would say just being mindful of time and everything. If you had one more sort of biggest triumph, I would love to hear from you. Actually, I have no clue what Mike is going to say in answer to this question. Like biggest parenting triumph and how you created it. I want to know.
Mhm.
I'm literally going through the Rolodex in my mind of like, which thing is he going to say? I have no clue.
That is a great question. I, this came up recently, it's not often where we can just celebrate a parent victory. It's not often that we get some type of external validation like, oh, we're fucking doing this right. But whenever our kids are open with us and come to talk to us and show this emotional high IQ, whether it be Sky, our 9-year-old, or our 18-year-old, or 19-year-old, sorry. All of them have this really high emotional IQ, and when that is on display, I'm so proud of it because again, I really value good communication. And so I absolutely love it when our kids, whether they are saying something we don't agree with or not, but the fact that they're just communicating with us, um, is really just I have a very proud moment when they're expressing themselves and they feel comfortable and they feel like they're in a safe environment to express themselves no matter what it is that they're expressing. Um, and I would say one more thing, like over the holidays, like family dynamics, can't help to just come out. Elijah comes home from college for the first time. He's dealing with his siblings and whatnot. And you were there. Like, um, Elijah and River had a disagreement, and they during the exchange between them, there was no yelling, there's no calling people names, there's nobody like being derogatory towards anybody, and they somewhat agree to disagree, although there's hurt feelings on both sides, but they handled it in a way that was, I thought, really mature. And, again, they left feeling like as though their feelings were hurt, but they also left feeling validated and heard. And they came back together later on and just talked it out a little bit more, which I love. It's like the, it's utopia for me to see that unfold.
Okay, so then the question becomes, how did you create that triumph?
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
would you say was the secret to that? What did you have to learn? What did you have to implement?
Well, first off, I think, we're always modeling, and we do, and you and I do the very, I mean, that plays out in our marriage and in our dynamics, 99% of the time. And so that's part of it. The other part is, um, I mean, I think it takes a lot of work to create a safe environment for there to be an exchange of hard feelings, or, or any feelings. And so I feel like I work really hard, validating, again, the kids, and being human in front of them, and being fallible, and not having my ego get in the way of telling them I'm sorry or apologizing if I behaved in a way that doesn't meet you know, my standards. And, you know, being okay to screw up in front of them, and then take responsibility for that. Um, and then just creating a loving and peaceful, experience and environment for them as much as I can.
I think I mean, it's easy for us and, on the other side to say, oh, you're okay with screwing up. You separate your ego, you stay present, allow your kids to suffer and and go through hardship and all this stuff. I mean, that's all shit that's so easy to say and freaking Herculean to actually do. And I really want to point it out to everybody, like neither Mike nor I have managed to get to this point without help. Like it's not something that we just like figured out and stumbled upon one day or read a self-help book and then that solved all of our troubles. Like Mike and I have chosen to really decide that our family and our relationships are like job number one, and if they're job number one, then they're worth investing time and money and energy into, and we have done so. And so if that feels like something that you're leaning towards, if that feels like, okay, I really want what this couple is describing here, but I have no fucking clue how to get from point A to point B. Like I hear that big time. We didn't either. And please give yourself permission to get the support and help and guidance and information and school skills and training and learning and all that stuff that you need to be able to actually parent this way. I can't, I mean, now we have our kids are getting older. We've got a college student now. Like, I can't tell you, like, at least once a day, I feel like, holy shit, it was so worth it. Like, these kids are like pure magic. And I feel really, really proud and also just, validated. Like we made the right choice in terms of like where we put our focus and our energy and our money and our time and all of that good stuff. So Mike, thank
Well,
you so much for being here with us today. And I'm sure we might have some future conversations about other topics. It'll be very interesting to share, give everyone a little peeks into the intimacy of our relationship. But this was great. Thank you so much.
it was my pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. Reminder that dad's group is enrollment is open. You are eligible for that founders pricing and benefits all through the month of January. So please do not hesitate. Book your discovery call with me. Let's figure out if you're a good fit for the group. Share with me all of your goals, your challenges, all of that good stuff. And I will see you all again on the flip side. Bye, everybody. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.